I have a really big video coming up that involves some very specific shots involving cars. I can't tell you anything more than that right now, but in the middle of doing research on car mounts, camera options, action cameras, stuff like that, Insta360 reached out and asked if they could sponsor an episode and send out an Ace Pro 2 for me to check out, which actually might do the trick. All right, so here's everything that they sent me. Let's start with this Explore hand grip. This guy is almost like a cage and a grip for the camera in case you want to use it as a handheld camera. We got a micro SD card. Great, we're gonna need that. We got a multi-mount. God only knows what that could mean. So it's kind of like a selfie stick situation, but it also becomes a little bit of a tripod. All right, here's the camera. This is actually my first action camera ever. So here's the actual camera. Here's the battery. Little moving door here. Let's get this battery installed. There we go. Close that guy up. Also, a real quick note on this guy, the Explore hand grip that you can get for the Ace Pro 2. I didn't pay a lot of attention to this thing initially, but it's actually really cool. Like you just saw, there's no bolts involved. It's not like a regular cage for a camera. It's designed to just slip on to the camera body like this, and then it clicks on. There's one little click, and there's the release right there. But what's cool is that it adds these buttons. So here's your shutter, and then there is your power button. I mean, there's only 2 buttons, but now it converts them to being a little bit more tactile. So I don't know if you can hear this, but listen. I mean, that's a killer shutter button. And you got the power button as well, a little bit more tactile. So the reason why this thing's kind of cool is because it does add some rigidity to the camera body. I would be less worried about this thing if I dropped it with this on. It adds kind of a hard, rigid outside. It also adds a cold shoe, be a little bit easier to mount it to things. But there's this side handle. And what's so cool about this side handle is it converts the camera and gives it kind of a new use case. So instead of walking around, if you're wanting to do some photography, some street photography, instead of walking around and kind of doing this deal and holding it like this, which is fine in a pinch, you can now hold it like a camera, but it still doesn't take up a lot of space. So you could still shove this in a jacket pocket, but now you're holding it like an actual camera, which is a lot more fun to use because of the flip screen is designed to come out on the cage as well. This is a really fun setup actually to walk around with. Now, the thing that we have to keep in mind about cameras like this is they have to do a lot of things. They have to put out decent images with no effort by the user at all. They have to have everything in full auto. You got to get good images right out of the gate, right out of the box. They have to have super wide lenses for action stuff. They have to have crazy stabilization. They have to have super high resolutions. We want to turn off as much processing as possible to match the other cameras that we're using for this project. And that will just mean going into the settings and turning down some of the distortion on the lens, some of the stabilization. We want to turn on log. We want to put everything in manual. So let's get into that. So we're going to power this guy up. And here we go. First thing we're going to do is pick a resolution. There are a lot of options here. I have compared all of them and I've found 4K to have the right amount of detail for me. For frame rate, we are going to, of course, be using 24 frames per second to match the other cameras. I keep active HDR off just to limit some of the processing. I turn stabilization either low or off. We're just going to turn it off for now. I am using 4:3 because it captures the most of the sensor. As you can see, when we switch between the two, you get a little bit more information on the vertical axis. Something we also need to keep in mind, you cannot access 4:3 when you're in 8K mode. As you can see, it is not available anymore. Next, I'm going to go to the shooting screen, and here are our field of views. They are extremely wide. There are some for action sports. We want to do linear because it has the least amount of distortion. It is the tightest, and that will work perfect for our use case. Next, I'm going to go into the shooting and exposure settings, and we're right off the bat going to change everything to manual. There are a whole bunch of color profiles here to choose from for a bunch of different scenarios. We're going to use none of them, and we're actually instead going to use iLog, which we will turn on. And then so that we can preview it, I'm going to turn on color preview. We'll say do not show again. Confirm. Now it's basically like a preview LUT, and that will give us the most control over the image. We'll need to go and get the manufacturer LUT to bring this out of iLog into Rec 709, but that's easy. I'll show you guys how to do that. We want to turn sharpening as low as it'll go, so we'll go to low. We want our shutter to be at about 150. Our white balance we will be setting manually per shot. Let's leave the shooting menu, and next we're going to go to settings, and I want to scroll over here to this little gear, which will give us the image settings. I want to make sure that H.265 is on. And it turns out that you actually can't shoot 264 in iLog. Perfect. I want to go to bitrate and change bitrate to high. We want the highest quality video that we can get. And I think we are ready to shoot. We're not doing anything too crazy right now. I just want to get some test shots, and then we'll throw them in Resolve and see what kind of images we can pull out of this thing. Okay, so we grabbed our shots, and now we're going to throw them in DaVinci Resolve. I want to start with this one because it's pretty high contrast. And first, I'm going to show how to grade these the simple way, and then I'll show how I like to grade them with my own power grade. First off, what we need to do is just look up 360 iLog LUT, and then you can just go here and download the LUT. You'll get a little LUT file. And then when you're in Resolve, hit this little gear down here. Color management, open LUT folder, and then you just throw the LUT into that folder right here where it says LUT. I have it in here already. And then you got to make sure that you press update lists and then press save. And then it should be in here whenever we go to add the LUT. Let's do that first for our simple, straightforward way of grading. You're going to right click on your node, go to LUT, and this one's called Pro Flat Color LUT version 1.1. And there we go. So nothing's happening here except we are going from iLog to Rec 709, but there's some other adjustments that we should do here. We need a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to make a node before the LUT with Shift S. And then I'm just going to start messing with my primaries just a little bit. I want to throw the midtones down, a little bit of the shadows. Let's take the highlights up. I want to go to log and make sure that we're not blitzing the darkest parts of the image. Let's do a little bit more midtone. And that's not too bad. So there's straight out of camera, and this is what we've done so far. My fear going into this was, even after changing all of the settings and turning the sharpness all the way down, turning the distortion all the way down, it would still feel kind of action cammy. But I'm actually really impressed at how organic this looks. So we're in 4:3. This is in 4K. And if we zoom in here and pixel peep, it doesn't look overly processed to me. Detail's not super duper over sharpened. There's not a whole bunch of weird aliasing or anything like that. It's actually really impressive. So this is really the important shot that I wanted to grab. I think this looks amazing. This is no stabilization. It's doing a really good job clamped on. I had it on a suction cup. I think the detail looks awesome. The dynamic range is great. Let's reset this, and we're going to use the Sauce 2.0. Usually this is set up to go from Blackmagic Film to DaVinci Wide Gamut. I'm going to change it to Rec 709. And then before that node, I'm going to add our LUT. So we're in Rec 709. It's going from Rec 709 to Wide Gamut, and then down here it's going from Wide Gamut to Rec 709. So that way all these adjustments in between are in a big, nice color space. Same thing, I'm going to go to the primaries, and I'm going to do some work to the contrast and exposure. I'm going to take the saturation down on the highly saturated parts of the image and bring up some of the lightly saturated parts. I'm going to turn off the film grain for now, and I'm going to turn off the blurring for now. This looks fantastic. There's even some color separation. There's some warmness here. In the shadows, we're picking up a little bit of blue. Take that grade and see what it looks like on these ones. We got this nice warm autumnal feel to the footage. I think the colors look really great. I'm actually really impressed with this. I wasn't expecting this level of image quality. I thought we'd have to do more work in post and take the sharpening down and do some really careful contrast work, but this would be really easy to cut in with other cameras that I would be using on this upcoming project. Also, really quick, here we are in Affinity Photo, and let's just work with and play with a raw file out of the camera for a second. This is a 50 megapixel still, and it's, like I said, a raw, so there's no corrections happening. All the corrections, like the distortion reduction, vignetting reduction, all that is gone, but we can fix it pretty fast. So I'm just going to come in here to the lens corrections. I'm going to scale all the way up, turn the distortion down. Let's do a little bit of lens vignetting. Maybe we want to come in here, add a little bit more brightness, take some vibrance away. I want to warm it up so it feels a little bit more like autumn. Yeah. Maybe a bit more saturation. Turn clarity down. And then we can peep here. It is crazy how sharp and how much detail there is here, especially with the camera so small. We got all the color information we need. There's plenty of detail in the leaves here. Here, let's check out this guy. I mean, I think that's a great image. And this is all in full auto, me just walking around and snapping photos super fast at a park by my house. So it's really cool that you can get shots with this level of detail and data in a camera package so small, especially with the Explorer hand grip, which I had on it. Makes it kind of like a fun pocket camera that's capable of some really decent stills. Like I said earlier, this camera has to be capable of a lot of things. This is the way I would set it up for my uses, but there's a ton more you can do depending on what kind of shots you need. If you don't want to do any color grading, there's a bunch of profiles built into the camera, including a few by Leica. If you're a photographer, you can grab 50 megapixel photos. If you're recording video at night, you can slap this guy in pure video mode. You can use the high resolution sensor to perform a 2x zoom without losing detail. There's a lot to love and play around with here. I can't wait to stick this thing in all kinds of weird places and get shots that I couldn't get before. If you guys are interested, check the description for a link. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you soon.